All right, let's talk about now something called DNS, which stands for Domain Name Service. When people like you and I are talking, we talk in domain names. I'll tell someone, hey, go check out facebook.com, or hey, go check out youtube.com. You give them just the name of the website. Now, we do that, you and I, because that's how we can remember it. That's easiest for us. But computers don't work that way. They talk in IP addresses. An example of an IP address is something like 31.13.71.36. This is essentially just a number that's assigned to a server that uniquely identifies it on the internet. That's so that we can browse to that number, and that'll route us directly to wherever that server is located. So that IP address that I just gave you, 31.13.71.36, that's the actual IP address of facebook.com. Now, it would be very weird for me to say, hey, go check out 31.13.71.36. That would still actually take me to facebook.com, but there's no way in a million years that even I or somebody else could remember that number. That's just, it's a lot easier to remember the name facebook.com. Also, don't do that because people would just look at you weird. So we need something to be able to remember these numbers for us so that we can remember facebook.com and that we don't have to deal with the numbers. And there's a service, and that's what DNS is. There's a service that actually converts these numbers for us. So facebook.com, when we type that into the computer, it uses something called DNS to convert that to the IP address so the computer has any clue what we're talking about. So really briefly, how this works is I open up my browser, I open up Chrome or whatever browser I use, I type in facebook.com. What my computer does is it says, okay, my owner, whoever's using my computer, it wants to go to Facebook. So I don't know where facebook.com is, so what I need to do is I need to go to the nearest DNS server. So what your computer does is it reaches out to a DNS server and it says, hey, do you have the IP address for facebook.com? The DNS server will quickly go through and look, and it'll say, yes, I do actually, and it'll give the computer back the IP address, which is that 31 number that I gave you before. It'll give that IP address, and then the computer says, hey, okay, I know how to get there, and it'll route its way to that server. On that server is hosted facebook.com or whatever website it is. So why am I telling you all this? Why do you even care? If the computer takes care of it for us, what does it matter? All we care about is that it just works for us, right? Not quite. If you're going to start a web hosting company, it's important that you understand kind of the inner workings and how things work behind the scenes, because as a web hosting company owner, you're absolutely going to have to interface with DNS. And so if you have a client who's having problems with DNS and you don't understand really what's going on either, then you're not going to look very good to your client, and we don't want that to happen. So it is very easy. It takes a little bit of practice just to kind of really solidify in your brain how all this works, but it's not that difficult. And in videos after this, I'm going to explain step by step how DNS works, kind of more nitty-gritty, so that you really get it solidified in your brain. Okay, so it's not a perfect analogy, but it's kind of the best thing I can come up with, so just bear with me here. Think of DNS as kind of like a mailing address. So if I were to give you the example fake address of 123 Main Street, Chicago, Illinois, United States. This is kind of how it works. So if I'm looking at a map here, there's all these different countries and continents and all these things. We know that because of the address that I just gave you, we need to go to the United States. Perfect. We're right here. Obviously, I'm in Idaho right now, doesn't matter. But for this example, we need to go to Chicago, Illinois. So with that address, we know that we're at least in the United States. It's narrowed us down to one country. Now we know that we need to go to the state of Illinois. So if I zoom in here, I can see, okay, look, great. We have found Illinois. Then the address takes us further, and we need to go to Chicago. So we zoom into Chicago. And then we know that we need to go to 123 Main Street within Chicago. I don't really know where Main Street is in here, but we're now in Chicago. I can zoom all the way into Main Street. Now that I can see the individual streets, I can zoom all the way in until I find the exact house, which is 123 which we're getting super close. Let's just say that this house right here is 123 Main Street. So again, it's not a perfect example, but that's kind of how IP addresses work with DNS. You give it a domain name, DNS will give you an IP address, and then your computer can take that IP address and route it to whatever exact server anywhere in the world that your website is located. 9 times out of 10, when you get a new client for your web hosting business, they're going to need help with DNS in some shape or form. And so it's really important that you kind of fully understand how this is working, because I really, really, really want you to show your clients that, look, I'm good at this, I know what I'm doing. And so in videos after this, I'm going to break down step by step by step, kind of the inner workings of DNS.